In the book of Enoch, quoted by Jude in the Bible, it says, "These are the angels who have descended from heaven to earth, and have revealed secrets to the sons of men, and have seduced the sons of men to the commission of sin. A commandment has gone forth from the Lord against those who dwell on the earth, that their end may be, for they know every secret of the angels." Enoch 63:1 and 64:6. This and the genetic manipulations and interbreeding between angelic beings and mankind were the reasons for the real flood of Noah's day. The Tower of Babel was constructed to contain the knowledge remembered from the pre-flood time. Knowing their efforts may be in vain, they had a contingency plan to make memorials with the knowledge encrypted within to be discovered for a future time and descendants. The Nazis were the first to make this connection and began searching all of these mystery spots around the globe through the occult bureau of the SS Anonap. Their approach to myths and legends was completely unorthodox. Mercury is the most interesting example of the many that are around. Mercury, the legendary hero, a symbol, and an element. Mercury in Roman and Hermes in the Greek mythology was the swift messenger of the gods, as well as the god of commerce and travel. The symbol of Hermes' staff shows a disc on either end of a central shaft with two intertwined serpents, with wings of flight above their heads. The Nazis saw that the intertwining could indicate that if you took the element mercury and put it into a vortex implosion, you would be able to create a vast amount of electricity that could produce flight. These kind of principles were understood by Victor Schauberger, who was made to work for the Nazi agenda. The dual discs on the shaft represented this electromagnetic energy generated from the mercury through a vortex implosion, as symbolized by the intertwined serpents. The final result produced rapid flight, as represented by the wings. Although you might think this strange, this is the very methodology used which led to the new technology the Nazis were claimed to have obtained by this unorthodox view. The Nazis may have constructed Mercury Plaza gyros. This system used an electrified mercury vapor. Further evidence of the unusual use of mercury was discovered in April of 1944. The ill-fated submarine U-859 left Germany and was sunk off the Straits of Malacca in Indonesia. This sub had a cargo of 33 tons of mercury. This was a strange cargo in such a huge amount and being treated as an important military cargo. In 1944, mercury was used for thermometers and switches, with no known military purpose. Some sort of unconventional use can only explain this strange cargo. It has been speculated by David Hatcher Childress and Rinaldo Vesco in their book Man-Made UFOs that the ship was headed for a base in the Antarctic, as one of many that headed in that region all during the late 30s and 40s. Another curious note was the death of Jack Parsons. He was an American rocket scientist who invented solid rocket fuel. He died in a fire while working with fuel made of mercury, and yes, he was involved with the occult societies that had Nazi connections during the war. There does seem to be more to mercury than just switches, thermometers, and mythology. This is only one small example of how the Nazis approached legends and myths in attempts to extract a physics from them. We'll now look at the actual physics and application of mercury as a key element in producing this kind of unorthodox flight.
Modern scientific researchers who have reported strange gravitational effects with rotating superconductors. The first and most famous was conducted by Russian scientist Eugene Podkletnov at a superconductor research laboratory in Finland, where he found evidence of artificially produced gravitomagnetic fields that were trillions of orders of magnitude larger than predicted by quantum mechanics. The effect appears to be directly related to Bose-Einstein condensation, which is where you cool something down to the point where all of the atoms in a substance reduce to a single wave function and behave as a single atom. I'm not going to get into the intricacies of quantum mechanical behavior, but basically this produces two observable effects, known as superconductivity and superfluidity. Just as a superconductor conducts electricity with zero resistance, a superfluid flows with zero resistance. That means zero viscosity, zero friction. I go over this in brief detail in my other video, but keep in mind that condensed matter physics is in itself an entire discipline of solid-state physics, which is only half the physics you need to know to truly understand anti-gravity. The other half is space-time manifolds and relativity. This is my drawing of the superfluid anti-gravity centrifuge. It's basically a hollow container which is filled with a special liquid which is both a ferrofluid, or magnetic fluid, and a superfluid, which flows with zero resistance. The idea is to use magnetic fields to accelerate the fluid in the container, getting it to spin around faster and faster. Because there is absolutely no friction, it will keep going faster and never slow down. Once the fluid approaches relativistic speeds, it could theoretically warp the space-time continuum around the craft, producing a so-called anti-gravity effect. Now, the most important thing is this fluid, what it is and how to make it. Fortunately, we have some information on the ingredients and properties of the fluid, thanks to those who were brave enough to come forward with the information. Edgar Fouché, who claims to have worked at Area 51 on the Aurora project, describes the inner workings of the TR-3B flying triangle and says that there is a central accelerator ring that rotates a mercury-based plasma supercooled to 150 Kelvin, pressurized to 200,000 atmospheres, and rotated at 60,000 revolutions per minute. The supercooling supports the theory that Bose-Einstein condensation is taking place, and the mercury-based plasma gives us another clue. Please note that there are two scientific definitions of the word plasma. It can mean a fluid suspension of solid particles, such as a blood plasma, or it can refer to the fourth state, or ionized gas phase of matter, which is the other type of plasma. Iron will actually float in mercury, because the density of mercury is higher than that of iron. This makes it possible to suspend trillions of tiny ferromagnetic iron particles inside the mercury, creating a ferrofluid plasma. However, mercury freezes solid at 234 Kelvin with 1 atmosphere of pressure, 12 Kelvin. So unless we have some sort of antifreeze component, the whole thing is going to freeze solid long before we can cool it down to 150 Kelvin under 200,000 atmospheres of pressure, as Edgar Fouché says we need to. Furthermore, the superfluid state has only been observed in the millikelvin range, and there is no reason to believe that mercury would become anything but a frozen block of solid metal at these temperatures. As of 2006, the highest temperature superconductor at ambient pressure was mercury, thallium, barium, calcium, copper oxide at 138 Kelvin, possibly 164 Kelvin under high pressure. This may provide us with an alternative solution by using superconducting particles suspended in the fluid. Because they contain thallium and barium, it is possible that they could function as our antifreeze, as both of these elements can be added to mercury to lower its freezing point. Again, a container to rotate this fluid inside of. A large hollow aluminum donut would probably work the best. Regardless of the material you use or how you build it, the important thing is that it's perfectly round and smooth on the inside. I would drive system. You should know that iron is attracted to magnets, and that coils of wire create electromagnets when you run current through them. So in order to get the fluid to circle around in one direction and gain momentum, you need to have a couple separate coils which turn on and off at specific time intervals. You can look up Tesla's electrical motor patents for some ideas, but I would also try using the Rodin coiling. Marco Rodin is a pretty far-out guy with no formal training in mathematics who has nonetheless found some rather interesting geometrical consequences of number theory, one of which happens to be an electrical coiling which is remarkably strong. Start with the fluid. It's the most important piece of the puzzle. The container and the electrical wiring is stage 2.
This kind of technology is not magic or just an illusion from Satan, but a real physical reality. In its origin, however, has been made known to man from the occult by its followers, the Nazis, just as the Book of Enoch had proclaimed. The biblical stories of the flood and the Tower of Babel also allude to the same things. In addition, Jesus said in Luke 21:26 that the powers of heaven should be shaken. Christian tradition tells of some kind of heavenly earthquake in the last days. More logical and applicable to our story is the fact that the word powers in the Greek means a supernatural power. The word for shaken can also mean agitation in general, but has a specific use as a displacement of something in a secure place to an insecure one. This can suggest that the supernatural powers of heaven are displaced from a safe position in heaven to the insecure one on earth to fallen man. This same idea is mirrored in Joel 2nd chapter 2nd verse, a day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness. This verse can be better rendered as meaning a day of practiced magic and deception, the lowering of high things. In context, these are the events just before the invasion of an army of locusts ascending from the bottomless pit, which directly relates to our story here. These prophecies are of a spiritual nature, but manifest on the physical plane of our existence. More on that to come.